Sometimes, time seems to be one of the greatest obstacles in life. In our haste, we want everything to happen quickly, for the answers to come soon, for the solution to arrive as fast as possible. However, there is something powerful and transformative in understanding that God's timing is not our timing. Even if God doesn't respond immediately, it doesn't mean He is not working. Often, He is shaping our character, preparing us for something greater and perfect that is yet to come. It may be difficult to accept this waiting time, but it is necessary for us to appreciate what is ahead. This waiting time is not lost time. In fact, it is preparation. God is preparing us to receive the blessing at the right moment, when we are ready to use it for His glory. And the secret is to trust, even when the answers do not come immediately. Remember that God, in His infinite love, knows what is best for each of us and always acts with wisdom. While you wait, He is working on something beyond what we can see with our eyes. Imagine that you are planting a tree. For it to grow strong and healthy, its roots need to establish themselves deeply in the soil. Similarly, God works in silence, preparing a future that you may not yet be able to understand. Your faith is tested, your patience is cultivated, and your trust is strengthened. During this period, you are not alone. God is with you, preparing your heart for the great blessing that is about to come. Remember figures like Abraham and Joseph, who waited years to see God's promises fulfilled in their lives. Even when circumstances seemed difficult, they trusted God's perfect plan. Abraham was called to wait for a son, and Joseph suffered many injustices before being elevated to a position of authority in Egypt. The key here is perseverance. God works behind the scenes while you wait. And it is important not to compare your timing with that of others. Each life is unique, and each process is different. Comparisons only lead to frustration and doubt. God has a specific plan for your life, and even though it may take time, you will be transformed along the way. He knows exactly when you are ready for what He has prepared for you. Meanwhile, His work continues in you, and it is a silent, yet profound work. So, if you find yourself in a moment of waiting, know that you are not wasting time. On the contrary, you are being prepared for something grand. Patience in this process reveals an authentic faith, one that accepts God's timing with humility and trust. When the answer comes, you will be more than ready to receive it and use it for the good of others, for God's glory. Trust the process. Trust that, even without seeing God's work, He is always working in your favor. He is not a distant God, but day by day, He is shaping your character, perfecting your faith, and preparing you for something greater. In the end, God's timing will not only be the best for your life, but it will be the moment when you see God's perfect plan unfold before your eyes. Waiting can be one of the most challenging periods of our lives, especially when we are waiting for something that seems very important to us. However, it is essential to understand that waiting has a purpose. It is not a lost time, but rather a moment of preparation. When God asks us to wait, He is not ignoring us, nor leaving us without answers. He is shaping us, preparing us to receive the blessing at the right time, when we will truly be ready to appreciate it and use it fully. Sometimes, what we feel as a delay is, in fact, divine preparation. God, in His infinite wisdom, knows the best time to give us what we need. The blessing He prepares for us will not just be an immediate solution, but something that will transform our lives in a lasting way. Therefore, while we wait, we need to trust that He is in control, orchestrating all the details of our lives for a purpose greater than we can understand at this moment. Think of a child waiting for a Christmas gift. The joy is not in the simple act of receiving, but in the anticipation, in what the wait represents. Similarly, waiting allows us to grow, learn to value what is coming, and, above all, prepares us to be good stewards of what God is about to grant us. What you are waiting for could be a great blessing, but without proper preparation, we will not be able to use it for the purpose it was meant for. This preparation process may require us to let go of immediate expectations and desires, accepting that God's timing is perfect, not ours. During this waiting period, we may be tempted to think that nothing is happening. But remember, while you are waiting, God is working behind the scenes. He is not a distant God. Even though it is not visible, He is shaping us, preparing our character, maturing our faith so that we can handle the blessing when it comes. God is never idle, and He is always preparing something in our favor. Waiting allows us to develop qualities like patience, perseverance, and humility. It strengthens our faith, helps us trust more deeply in God, and recognize that His plan for us is better than anything we could plan for ourselves. During the wait, we can learn to rest in His peace, fully trusting that the right moment will come. Remember that waiting is not rejection, but preparation for what is to come. Like an athlete training for victory, you are being shaped, prepared, and strengthened. When God feels you are ready, He will not hesitate to release the blessing. Until then, trust the process and know that, in every moment of waiting, there is a purpose. And that purpose is to shape your life for a greater good. Therefore, if you find yourself in a period of waiting, do not be discouraged. God has not forgotten you. He is just preparing the ground for something wonderful. When the time comes, you will be able to receive and use this blessing in a way that honors God and blesses your life. Trust, for waiting has a purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, you will see that what you were waiting for was far greater and more perfect than you could ever imagine. Many times, we are so focused on seeing results immediately that we forget that what truly matters is the process that leads to them. Even when we don't receive what we want instantly, it's important to trust that God has a perfect plan for us. He is not just a provider of quick fixes, but a divine architect who works in times and ways that are best for us, even if we cannot fully understand it at the moment. True trust in God goes beyond wanting things to happen at the time we expect. It involves believing that He knows the right time to act. When we seek immediate results, we are often just trying to solve our problems quickly, without giving God room to reveal His greater plan. What we see as a delay or an unanswered prayer may actually be the time God is using to strengthen us and prepare us for something far better than we imagined. In such moments, it is essential to maintain trust in God, knowing that He is working in silence to fulfill His promises. And even though the answer seems delayed, it will come at the right time, according to His wisdom. At times, waiting for what we want makes us question the effectiveness of our faith. But remember, trusting in immediate results doesn't mean forcing an answer. It means trusting that what God has for us is not limited to what we asked or expected. He always has something better in mind, something that goes beyond our expectations. This challenges us to trust even when we don't see immediate results, knowing that God is preparing something deeper and more lasting. We want God to solve everything now, all at once. But think of moments in the Bible when God's promises were not fulfilled immediately. Joseph, for example, had to wait years before seeing the fulfillment of God's promises in his life. During this waiting period, God was silently working, preparing Joseph for the great task ahead of him. And this process made him stronger, wiser, and more prepared to be a blessing to others. God teaches us that even trusting in immediate results is a way of submitting to His divine plan. When we accept that He knows the best time and way to act, our faith is matured. Every small step of trust molds us into the image of Christ. So, even when results are not instant, trust in God becomes proof that we believe in something greater, something that transcends our immediate understanding. Therefore, when you face situations where results are not quick, remember that God is working. He does not act hastily, but strategically. When you trust even in the results that seem delayed, you will see that God's timing is always the best. He is preparing a perfect scenario, and you will be ready to enjoy the blessing when it comes, exactly at the right time. Trusting God in times of waiting is not just about waiting. It is about accepting that God is in full control, even when the answers seem delayed. When we place our trust in His divine plan, we are allowing Him to do what is best for us, and this is reflected in our lives in ways we may not yet see. Often, God's silence can be unsettling. When we are waiting for an answer or a miracle, it is natural to desire to see signs of action. However, it is crucial to understand that even when we don't see anything happening, God is working in silence. His work is often not visible to our eyes, but it is deeply rooted in matters of the heart, in strengthening our faith, and in perfecting our character. Trusting in God requires believing that He is working, even when we cannot perceive immediate changes. In moments of silence, we may be tempted to think that God has forgotten us or that He is not acting. But the truth is, God never stops working. He acts in ways we cannot immediately understand, and His work may be taking place in areas we don't even imagine. This waiting time, this silence, is often the time of greatest transformation. God is preparing us for what is to come, working in our hearts, our patience, and even our gratitude. Abraham, for example, waited many years to see God's promise of a son fulfilled. During that time, God was shaping Abraham and his faith. When the promise was finally fulfilled, Abraham was spiritually stronger and more prepared for the blessing. Just like Abraham, you may not see immediate results, but God is in control and working to ensure that, when the moment comes, you will be ready to receive what He has prepared for you. The idea that God is working in silence can be difficult to accept, especially when circumstances seem to be falling apart around us. But it is during these periods that we must trust the most. Every step we take in faith, even when we don't see external changes, is a step towards the greater purpose God has for our lives. His work is being done in the background, preparing us for the blessing that, sooner or later, will manifest. Remember that patience and trust in God, even when He seems silent, are tests of faith. It is a test of our trust in His perfect plan. And, like a tree that grows slowly, but solidly and strongly, God's work in our lives creates deep roots. When the right time comes, you will see the fruits of this silent preparation. Therefore, if you are wondering what God is doing, know that He is working. Do not doubt this. He is preparing something much greater than we can imagine. Trust that, in His silence, God is creating the solid foundation you need to flourish in His will. What is invisible now will become visible at the perfect moment. When we feel discouraged during the waiting process, it is always helpful to look at biblical examples of people who went through similar journeys, and who, even in the most difficult situations, kept hope and trust in God. Abraham, for example, waited years to see the fulfillment of God's promise to have a son, and still, he did not lose faith. During his journey of waiting, he was challenged to trust God in deep ways, and his example teaches us that, even when time seems endless, God fulfills His promises at the right moment. Abraham's story reminds us that the process of waiting is not just about patience, but also about learning to trust in God's perfect plan. Another powerful example is Joseph, who endured years of suffering and injustice before seeing God's promises fulfilled. Joseph was sold as a slave by his own brothers, and along his journey, he faced many challenges, such as being falsely accused of sexual assault and spending time in prison. But even in the midst of adversity, he kept hope and trust in God. In the end, Joseph became the second most powerful man in Egypt, and it was precisely through suffering and waiting that he was shaped to fulfill God's plan for his life. Just like Joseph, often what we experience during our wait is how God prepares us for the blessing He has for us. These examples speak not only about patience but about the importance of maintaining hope. When the promise seems distant or impossible, hope allows us to look beyond the circumstances and trust that God is working, even when we cannot see it. Hope is the certainty that God is in control, and that He will always fulfill His promises, even if He doesn't do so in the time we expect. Abraham and Joseph each learned, in their own way, to trust God, even when reality seemed to contradict what God had promised. Each biblical character who went through a period of waiting was also transformed during that time. Waiting is not just about what we expect to receive, but about what God wants to do in our lives as we wait. God uses these periods to shape our character, strengthen our faith, and prepare us for the future He has planned. If the examples of Abraham and Joseph teach us anything, it's that waiting is a crucial part of God's plan, not just an endless delay. God never abandons us in our moments of uncertainty. In His Word, He assures us that He is with us, even when we don't see the answers. The Bible is full of examples of people who, just like us, faced long periods of waiting but came out of these situations stronger, more confident, and more prepared to live out God's promises. When you feel like you've been waiting too long, remember these figures who walked the same path and never lost faith. And that's exactly what makes hope one of the greatest virtues we can cultivate. To keep hope alive is to acknowledge that, regardless of the circumstances, God is working to fulfill His promises, even if it takes time. Remember, God's promises never fail, and the waiting time is just part of the preparation process. So, as you look to the examples of Abraham, Joseph, and other biblical characters, be encouraged. They show us that true hope is not hope in immediate results, but an unwavering trust that, in God's time, everything will be perfect. They trusted, and God honored His word, just as He will do for you. When we talk about waiting, we're often not just talking about the expectation of a material blessing or a desire fulfilled. True hope lies in the act of waiting itself, in trusting that God is listening and working, even when the signs are not yet visible. Hope, in this sense, is not simply waiting for something to happen, but fully trusting in God, knowing that He will always be working in our favor. Therefore, the focus should not be on the delay or lack of immediate response, but on the certainty that God is leading everything toward His perfect purpose. Sometimes, waiting can become a difficult experience, especially when it seems like things aren't changing or when we feel that God is not hearing our prayers. However, it is essential to maintain hope in hope itself, meaning, to keep faith that, even without immediate answers, God is acting. When you trust that God is listening, even in the silence, you begin to realize that waiting is actually a time of great spiritual growth. It is in this time that you learn to depend fully on Him, trust His plan, and understand that waiting is part of the process of maturity and preparation. A clear biblical example of this is the story of Hannah, the mother of Samuel. She prayed for many years for a child, and for a long time, it seemed like God was not answering. However, Hannah kept her hope alive. She did not lose faith and, instead, used that time of waiting to draw even closer to God. Her faith was rewarded, and God gave her a son. Hannah's story teaches us that even when the answer does not come immediately, our hope in God should not waver. Our trust should be in the certainty that He knows the right time to act. Hope in hope teaches us that we are not waiting in vain. Every unanswered prayer in the time we expect, every silence, is an opportunity to learn to trust more deeply. This hope is the key to keeping our faith alive and active. Waiting is not a time of inactivity, but rather a time of preparation and transformation. God uses silence to strengthen us, to teach us that His answer comes at the perfect time, neither before nor after. It is also important to understand that true hope is not only manifested in the expectation of an immediate benefit, but in the full trust that God has a greater purpose for each of us. When we place our hope not in circumstances, but in God's faithfulness, we become firmer in our faith and more prepared to receive what He has for us. As we wait, our character is shaped, and our trust in God is transformed. Remember, hope in hope is the trust that, even without clear answers, God is listening and working. In every moment of silence, He is molding us for something greater, for a plan that is beyond our immediate understanding. Do not be discouraged if the answer does not come when you expect. God is working in you and in your life in ways that you may not be able to see now, but will be clear in the future. Therefore, true hope goes beyond the expectation of a specific blessing. It lies in trusting that, even in silence, God never abandons us. Waiting is not a wasted time, but a preparation for something greater. Keep your hope firm, knowing that God is always listening, always working, and that His answer will come when you are truly ready to receive it. In our faith journey, it's natural to feel tempted to compare our lives with others, especially when the wait seems long and God's promises have not yet been fulfilled. Society often pushes us to seek immediate results and measure our progress based on what others are achieving. But if there is one thing the Bible teaches us, it's that each path is unique, and God has a specific and perfect plan for each of us. Comparing our walk with others only leads to frustration, insecurity, and often causes us to lose focus on the purpose God has for our lives. Joseph, for example, was a man who, for many years, was at the bottom, seeing others achieve success while he was treated unjustly. However, he never compared himself with others. His story is a powerful example that God's plan for each person is unique, and each of our journeys is made up of moments that shape and prepare us for something greater. Joseph had no control over the events around him, but he trusted that, despite the apparent delay, God had a plan for him, and when the right time came, he was ready to assume his leadership position. When we compare ourselves to others, we risk straying from God's plan for our lives. God works with each person individually. What he does in one's life may be different from what he does in another's, and that does not mean the other's journey is better or more blessed. Comparison only makes us lose focus on what truly matters, trusting in God and his unique plan for us. Every stage of our lives is a necessary step in the preparation for what he has reserved for us. When we focus on what others are doing, we may forget how important the unique process God is carrying out in us really is. God's timing is not our timing, and comparing ourselves with others only prevents us from seeing what he is doing in our own journey. If you compare yourself to others, you may begin to feel that your wait is harder or longer, but the truth is, God is working in you in a way that is perfect for your life. Instead of looking at others and wishing for what they have, seek to see how God is acting in your life and how he is preparing you for the right moment of his blessing. When we avoid comparisons, we begin to understand that life is about the unique relationship we have with God. Every experience, every wait, and every divine answer has a purpose. If we stop looking at others, we can see more clearly what God is doing in us. Instead of worrying about what others are achieving, we should focus on trusting that God is working on our behalf, in his perfect timing. Remember that each person has their own journey, and even if others seem ahead, that doesn't mean God has abandoned your path. God's timing is always perfect, and the process you are living through now is exactly what you need to be ready for the blessing he has for you. God never makes comparisons, he only knows the journey he has for each of us. Therefore, instead of comparing yourself, seek to trust in what God has for you. Waiting is not a competition. God has something unique for each of us, and by focusing on our relationship with him, we can have peace in the certainty that what he has reserved is always the best, at the right time, and in a unique way. Do not compare. Just trust in what God is doing in your life, and know that, when the right moment comes, you will be ready to enjoy his blessing. Patience, in many ways, is one of the greatest tests of faith we can offer to God. When we are waiting for him to fulfill his promises in our lives, what is really being tested is our trust in him. True patience is not a simple passive waiting, but an active trust in the fact that God is working, even when we do not see immediate results. Therefore, the waiting time is not a period of inactivity, but a time of refining, where our faith is purified and strengthened so we can receive the blessing he has for us. The Bible teaches us that patience produces strong character. In James 1 verses 3-4, we read, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. This shows us that patience is not something that happens by chance, but is a quality God desires to develop in us. When we remain firm in waiting, our faith becomes deeper and more genuine, as we learn to trust completely in God, regardless of external circumstances. It is easy to demonstrate faith when everything is going well, but true faith is revealed in times of difficulty, silence, and waiting. Patience is the fuel that keeps our faith alive during these periods. When we wait with patience, we are telling God, I trust you, even when I don't see immediate solutions. This teaches us to depend on him, not act on our own, and not try to rush his divine plan. Patience, therefore, reveals a heart that recognizes God's sovereignty and trusts in his perfect timing. Patience also teaches us to wait for what is best. God not only gives us what we need, but he gives us the best, at the right moment. Waiting, though difficult, is necessary so that we can be prepared for what He has reserved for us. When we rush things, we risk settling for something smaller than what God has planned for us. For example, if a farmer hurries the growth process of a plant, he may end up with a poor harvest. Similarly, our patience is key to ensuring that we are ready to receive God's blessings in the way He has prepared them for us. God used great biblical figures to teach us about patience. Take Moses, for example, who spent 40 years in the desert before leading the people of Israel to the Promised Land. During that time, he not only learned to trust in God but was shaped to be the leader the people needed. Had Moses rushed his process, he wouldn't have been prepared for the great challenge God had for him. In the same way, our lives are shaped by patience, and only through it can we achieve the spiritual maturity needed to handle the blessings God will give us. When you are waiting for something, remember that patience reveals your trust in God. It is not just about enduring the waiting time, but about using that time to grow, to be shaped, and to strengthen your faith. This is an exercise in humility, as it means recognizing that there is something greater than our understanding, something that only God knows when and how it will manifest. Patience, therefore, becomes the proof that, regardless of the circumstances, our faith in God is authentic and unchanging. Therefore, as you wait for the fulfillment of God's promises, see patience as an opportunity for spiritual strengthening. It is not just a passive wait, but an active time of character building. When you wait with patience, you are allowing God to complete the work He started in your life, trusting that the outcome will, in the end, be better than you could have imagined. Patience is, without a doubt, a reflection of the authentic faith God desires to develop in each of us. Living in a world full of uncertainties and challenges can be a draining experience. Often, we are confronted with situations that are beyond our control, and anxiety takes hold of our hearts. However, there is something profoundly transformative in learning to rest in the peace that comes from God, especially when we are going through times of waiting. When we give our worries to Him, we are invited to trust that He has everything under control, even when the results are not immediately visible. The peace that comes from God does not depend on circumstances, but on the trust that He is working for a greater purpose. In Philippians 4 verses 6-7, the Bible teaches us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." This verse reveals to us that when we give our worries to God in prayer, He gives us a peace that goes beyond human understanding. This peace is not conditioned by what is happening around us, but by the certainty that God is in control of all things. In moments of uncertainty, it is often difficult to see beyond the immediate situation. The tendency is to want to resolve everything as quickly as possible and seek immediate solutions. But God calls us to trust in Him, to rest in the certainty that He is working on our behalf, even when we cannot perceive it. This does not mean that we should not act or strive, but that we should act with confidence and peace, knowing that, regardless of the circumstances, God has a perfect plan for each of us. The peace that God offers us is the assurance that He is by our side every step of the way, even in the most difficult situations. When we accept His peace, we release our worries and fears, and allow Him to guide our steps. True peace in times of uncertainty is the peace that comes from the understanding that we are not alone. God never leaves us, even when it seems that He is silent. He is always working, shaping us, and guiding us toward a greater purpose. We could think of life as a journey, and God's peace as the certainty that, although the path is unknown, He is our guide. Often, we worry about what is to come, but if we trust in God, we can rest in the security that He knows what is best for us. No matter how uncertain the situation may seem, God assures us that He is always in control and that, at the right moment, He will reveal what He has planned. In moments of difficulty, it is essential to remember that the peace of God is not something we can produce on our own. It is a divine gift, which we receive and we give our worries and anxieties to Him. This requires complete trust in His power and wisdom. When we can rest in His peace, we find strength to keep going, even when circumstances are difficult or answers do not come immediately. Therefore, when you are going through times of uncertainty, seek the peace of God. Remember that He has everything under control and that His peace surpasses all understanding. As you rest in this peace, you will be strengthened, prepared, and transformed for the purpose He has for your life. The peace of God is an anchor that keeps us firm, no matter how much life's storms may shake us. Have you ever found yourself questioning why things don't happen in your time? How many times does the wait for God's answer feel like an endless desert, with no signs, no changes? The frustration of not seeing things happen the way and in the time we imagined can be a burden that, at times, feels unbearable. But the truth is, God's timing is not ours. He is never late, and every second of waiting has a divine purpose. Even though, in many moments, the answers don't come the way we want or at the exact time we expect, God never stops working on our behalf. He is in control, preparing us for what's to come and shaping our faith and character in the process. The great lesson, however, is to learn to trust, even when we see nothing happening around us. The wait is not wasted time, but a preparation for something greater and more perfect. In this process, our faith will be refined, our patience tested, and our trust in God strengthened. When we learn to rest in His sovereignty and wait with patience, we understand that what God has for us is infinitely better than what we imagine. And in the end, the blessing comes, not in our time, but in God's perfect timing. What is to come will be magnificent because He is in control of everything. While waiting for the fulfillment of God's promises, make your patience a tool for strengthening faith and hope. With every day you wait, you are getting closer to what He has prepared for you. True peace and trust in God come when we accept that His timing is perfect and when we recognize that He is in control, guiding each step of the way. Therefore, instead of worrying about times and deadlines, focus on building a deeper relationship with God, knowing that, in the end, He will always give us the best at the perfect time.